My hand was still trembling as I pulled shut the locker's battered door and heard the latch clack, echoing a little too sharply in the half-lit factory men's room. It was almost dawn, but inside the hum of machinery already pounded, metal against metal, hot oil, rubber belts. My shift was ending, their shift was beginning. Most of the boys from the night crew were already gone, having scattered the second the final whistle blew, eager to snag a bus before the daytime heat picked up. I lingered a moment longer beneath the sickly light, avoiding the eye of anyone who might notice the pink slip fluttering from my fist. "You hear what happened to Raphael?" someone whispered by the sink. I didn't look up, just slipped the envelope into my pocket and washed my face. The water was cold, sharp, like a slap to bring me into the day. In the mottled mirror, my face looked older than my 27 years. My mouth moved in silent rehearsal. "It'll be fine, it'll be fine." I didn't believe it, but sometimes saying those words stopped my chest from caving in. Outside, thin grey light crawled over the hills, turning the shanties above Santa Teresa into a jagged silhouette. The city woke slowly, shutters creaked open, vendors dragged carts out into the street, a few kids shuffled barefoot, fiddling with battered cell phones. My bicycle leaned against the wall behind the factory, right where I'd left it. As I gripped the handlebars, a lump swelled in my throat. The urge to ride anywhere but home was strong. But as always, habit and hunger steered me toward the hills where my mother's little apartment waited. After 3 years working nights at that plastics factory, scraping, packing, sweating through the stink of burning polymers, I was dismissed as easily as if my presence had held no value whatsoever. I'd earned no extras, only good luck kid, and the rumor of a month's wages if I was lucky. It was a grief I had seen coming, the ache of being let go not just from a job but from belonging. Strangely, what I felt beneath that grief was something clearer, sterner, a certainty that tonight there'd be no more pretending. This time, I wouldn't waste the next few years scrabbling to hold on to whatever factory or shop would have me. This time I would force myself to face the other thing, the ridiculous thing, the dream I'd scarcely let anyone see. I coasted down Raw Ducatit, inwardly preparing for the return home. Our apartment was little more than a narrow slice of a crumbling colonial house, split now among too many families. My mother was waiting in the kitchen, the radio already blaring news of traffic on the Pont Rio Nitre. She didn't look up when I entered but called out, "Raphael, come eat while it's hot." I stood behind her, taking in the neat rows of plastic containers stacked, the cheap coffee percolator murmuring on the stove. I could tell her. Maybe now I had to. Instead, I just nodded, sat, and tried to force down spoonfuls of watery canya. The newsreader's voice spat out numbers, inflation rates, crime statistics, another body found down by the port. Finally I said it, "They let me go, downsizing, my shift is gone." She set her mug down with a quick report and turned. Her eyes, so sharp from years of stretching coins and cleaning hospital floors, narrowed. She only asked one question, "So what now?" I felt 12 years old again. "I want to try to be a filmmaker," I said quietly, so quietly that maybe if I whispered it, it wouldn't sound foolish enough to invite laughter. She didn't laugh exactly, she just snorted, lips pursed, and shook her head. "Filmmaker, with what, your father's cell phone?" I wanted to explain that I'd spent hours on borrowed internet at the library watching shaky documentaries about the hills, crime, music, race, resistance. I wanted to say that I'd written outlines and shot short clips on my phone and stitched them together with free software working between shifts. Instead, I found myself silent. "Dreams are for sleeping, Raphael," she said, not unkindly, just tired. "You have bills coming and no job." I nodded, shoving the last spoonful of broth past my teeth as the anger and shame churned in my gut. That morning set the routine, neighbors stopping by to offer advice, cousins sneaking sidelong glances when I passed, my Uncle Jorge, who ran a fish stall in Gamboa, clapping me on the back in the market. "You come work with me." All this filmmaking stuff, Esther ridiculo. Maybe it was, but I could not let go of it. At night, when the world was hushed and the only sounds were the whirring fans and dogs barking at shadows, I stayed awake, hunched over my ancient laptop, mapping out scenes, imagining a story I wanted to tell, a story that felt both too small and too huge for me. A documentary that would chart my neighborhood and the long memory of the hills, the lives snaking through them with dignity and sorrow. The next months were the hardest of my life. Finding work as a day laborer, I carried sandbags at construction sites, helped paint creaking mansions in Lime by the hour, and hawked snacks on the beach when shifts dried up. Every spare cent went toward digital memory cards, bus fare, and minutes for uploading my rushes at the library. When I asked people if I could film them, old men playing cards below the fig trees, women ferrying water jugs, their first reaction was always suspicion, followed by, more often than not, why? Who's going to watch this? I didn't know. The documentary, little by little, became less about showing off talent and more of a lifeline. When one friend from grammar school caught me shooting a scene near the trolley tracks, he asked if I'd lost my mind. Here's a man with no work, no car, no clue, recording trash for YouTube. But I kept at it. I filmed boys climbing rooftops to repair tin panels with only their bare hands, filmed the nuns in the favela teaching children to read. Filmed dawn breaking each morning, lighting the red tile roofs like a promise. I interviewed the old grocer about the neighborhood's history, caught girls practicing funk moves on the cracked basketball court. Nights I'd huddle at the old desk, piecing grainy footage together, learning how to make a story weave itself from all these trembling fragments. And always, the laughter, the head shaking, the slow-burning scorn of family and community. In family gatherings, my mother's sisters joked about the artist. Cousins acted out hand to brow, I am Raphael, director of nothing. The script never changed. At times it scorched, other times I let it roll off me. The grief never truly left, but in the struggle I found clarity. I did not fit the mold they'd cast for me, perhaps I never would. If this gamble failed, at least I'd know the shape of my longing. Around my 29th birthday I had, at last, a finished cut, chopped together from borrowed images, scratch audio, overdubbed with narration I recorded by talking at my phone beneath a blanket. I called it Raízes das Colinas, Roots of the Hills, subtitles in English as if I were someone who could dream beyond these narrow blocks. I uploaded it to 2 Brazilian amateur film websites and to YouTube, certain that its only viewers would be the handful of kids I'd filmed and maybe an American tourist who'd lost his way online. For a long week, nothing, no views, no shares, no comments. I kept working. I painted a school, helped my uncle gut fish, sorted mangoes in a warehouse. But then, one Tuesday morning, I got an email from someone I didn't know. Julia Casimiro, a producer working with a small but respected cable channel in Sao Paulo. She'd seen a link to my Raízes das Colinas posted on a forum by a student. She wanted to talk. Was it really mine? We swapped messages, then phone calls. She told me my film was authentic, urgent. She asked if I could send the original files. I biked halfway across Rio to borrow a friend's decent laptop and upload everything in a cafe, my hands sweating so badly I nearly dropped the hard drive. Julia offered to help me polish it for TV. Through a blur of nerves, I signed release forms and collected a fee, more than I'd ever seen at once. My neighbors' faces, when the small crew came to reshoot certain scenes, were studies in confusion. My mother watched them laying out lav mics, rolling grip trolleys, and asked 2 of the women, "You're filming him, for what?" The air changed after that. When the film aired, it triggered a crackling kind of interest locally. Teachers called to invite me to speak. A community center requested a screening. At first, people watched out of curiosity, but within the hills, older residents, the ones I had depicted, watched themselves on screen and pressed fingers to faces, laughing, crying, sometimes both. Suddenly, the nonsense became discussion. With Julia's encouragement, I applied for a grant and received funding for another film, this time a series documenting how music emerges from the favelas and floods the city. I was offered a battered but functioning camera and a stipend. The years ahead unfurled, one challenge tumbling into another, but each project led to another, more ambitious one. Suddenly the world opened, Sao Paulo, Salvador, across the ocean to Portugal. Yet despite the progress, something knotted inside me remained unhealed. It wasn't rage, but the ache of never being seen by those who mattered most, not truly. My mother hung the first newspaper clipping about her filmmaker son but never asked about my work. My cousins made jokes laced with awe. Sometimes joy simply slid past us all, sometimes a deeper reckoning was needed. 5 years after that morning at the factory, I was invited to screen my latest and most personal documentary, centered on the long legacy of my own neighborhood, at a cultural festival in Rio. This one had a budget, real backing, a sound tech, and a festival slot. The organizers insisted on an outdoor screening right in Santa Teresa, where it was set. I agreed, rehearsing polite replies to both the hopeful and dismissive questions I knew would come. In the week leading up to the event, flyers went up all over, the barbershop hung a banner, the old women carried word to the church group. My mother tried to feign indifference, but each day she asked more detailed questions. How many people are you getting paid? Who else will be there? On the night of the screening, the air was weightless, faintly electric. The heat had broken just after sunset, and hundreds had gathered in the schoolyard, old people in folding chairs, teens perched on the steps, children snaking through the crowd with bags of papoka. I took my place at the edge, out of the stadium lights. My mother sat near the front with my aunt lured, straight-backed and tense, flanked by people who had, for a decade, doubted me. I heard snatches of familiar voices. Old schoolmates, my uncle who had called me ridiculo 24 times, endless neighbors and their staccato bursts of laughter. They were excited, but the old skepticism hadn't vanished entirely. I could see it in their posture, the doubt curling their lips, the unwillingness to cede that I had done anything different than them. When the title flashed up on the battered projection screen, a hush fell over the yard. I watched as if outside myself while my film, the film I had dreamed of through years of scorn, played in front of these people who knew every crack in every wall. They saw themselves. The shopkeepers, the street dogs, the stubborn, everyday romances and quarrels that defined our place. My own voice, once so hesitant, carried over the crowd. Nossa historia e acute fata de raízes de lutas e de sonhos. I heard a gasp when the montage showed the young rapper, murdered 2 years before, and his mother's speech, words that had left us all raw. I watched women dab at their cheeks, men nudge each other, a handful laughed quietly but not cruelly. When the credits rolled and applause swelled, I tried to still my shaking hands, tried not to look at my mother. But then, as the crowd began to talk among themselves, a sound cut through, the voice of my Uncle Jorge, loud, open-mouthed, unembarrassed. "I'll be damned," he said, pride and disbelief wrestling in his tone. "O molk fez mesmo. The boy did it." For a moment the crowd hesitated, uncertain whether to stay cool. Then his words unlocked something, a tide of congratulations, questions, embraces. Neighbors clapped me on the back, congratulated my mother, asked if I'd film the football game next week. My mother's hands, quick and trembling, found mine in the tumult. Words failed her, she just pulled me close under the stinging lights, her head resting on my shoulder as the yard hummed with newfound respect. There were still skeptics, of course. There always would be, but that night they faced another reality. There, flickering in the open air, was the evidence none could contest. My mother squeezed my hand harder, then let go and stood up straight. "I always said you were stubborn," she said, eyes bright beneath the street lamps, voice carrying just a trace of pride. "But maybe that's not so bad." Home that night, after everyone drifted away and the echo of applause faded down the stairs, I left my bicycle outside and walked the empty alley. The old streetlights threw gold across the broken pavement. My feet led me past the old plastic factory, now shuttered, its sign half dropped and humming with pigeons. I let myself remember, truly remember, what it felt like, that morning carrying the pink slip, carrying shame and longing all mixed together. I did not feel triumph so much as something less dramatic, more quietly complete. Relief and, yes, forgiveness, for myself, for them, for the long time it had taken all of us to see. In returning, I found myself not above, not separate, but woven deeper into these hills, my roots tangled with theirs. Grief still, but with clarity, a vision of what I could yet build and how I could bring them all along. I turned homeward, the sense of belonging in my chest strong and unfamiliar. Tonight there would be rest. Tomorrow, as always, there would be more to film, more stories to tell. But now I walked on into the soft pre-dawn dark, the city and its people tangled, laughing, always dreaming, around me.